Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I'm in Putney. You can see the plaque behind me, dedicated to Edward Gibbon, who was born in a house on this site, Lime Grove, in 1737. So unfortunately no longer exists. This was a village 6 miles to the west of London, and his father was a highly successful barrister and a Tory MP, so very much an establishment background. Gibbon then attended Westminster School, which is right beside Parliament. It's the Palace of Westminster and Westminster Abbey. So he had an elite education, and he went up to Magdalen College, Oxford, at the age of 18. Plenty of people started university earlier than that. So he spent a year at Oxford and recalled it was the most idle 12-month of his life. Gibbon was mainly studying the classics. He didn't choose a subject as such. He read a lot of history, but often was studying history through Latin and indeed ancient Greek. He requested his tutor to allow him to dip into Arabic, and Arabic was a very new thing at Oxford University at the time. Anyway, he dropped out of Oxford after a year, which was not uncommon. Jobs were not competitive for those who were well connected, and his father could have easily got him a desirable situation. So they weren't short of money, and there wasn't really this urge to get qualifications. He then went off on the Grand Tour. The Grand Tour was for upper-class young men in the 18th century, and they would of course travel to France. They would be able to road test their French. They would certainly spend plenty of time in Paris soaking up the culture, and Britishers told themselves that their political system was the ideal combination of monarchy, aristocracy, and an elected chamber in Parliament. But all but the most close-minded Britishers had to acknowledge the French culture was superior. And Italy, to some extent, despite its political backwardness, was also a cultural leader. France, known as La Grande Nation at the time, French and Italian opera and the plastic arts were far ahead of anything produced here in the British Isles. So from France, one would travel through Italy, visit the ancient ruins of Rome and so on, see many galleries like the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. People would sometimes wander around the lakes of Switzerland, dip into Germany, follow the romantic road, and many people would take ship for Greece, then being part of the Ottoman Empire, and look at some of the monuments of ancient Greece. Of course, this has been the mainstay of their education. Boys who are very adventurous would go to Turkey, visit Istanbul, we used to call it Constantinople, indeed the Holy Land, that's Palestine and Israel. And nobody went to Egypt at that time though. So he went on the Grand Tour, and he got to Italy. And then he took that fateful step, he crossed the Tiber, he became a Roman Catholic, which was regarded as anathema by many people in England back then. So people called it the fashionable Satanism of Rome. And he said one day he was sitting in Rome by the ruins of an ancient temple and hearing some priests chanting their Vespers, where it made him reflect on the collapse of the Roman Empire. There is at the old Forum. And he said this was the germ of the idea of his magnum opus, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which is a multi-volume book, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. And he advanced the highly controversial thesis at the time that Christianity was a bad thing and a destructive force, and it sapped the empire of its vigor and virility. So Decline and the Fall of the Roman Empire is certainly fun. It created quite a stir in the press. It's very tendentious, very readable. Comes across as almost fiction in its lively style. Going back to the the primary sources, and then re-evaluating what we thought, and here people took it for read that Christianity was in advance. Gibbon said the opposite was true. Well, that is Edward Gibbon, perhaps the most celebrated British historian in the 18th century.